Good morning, good afternoon to our dear audience. Thank you so much for joining us for the very last session of the India-Africa ICT Expo 2021. Thank you for joining us. This session is named Inside the Innovator's Mind, New Vistas for Digital Africa. And particularly what this will be discussing, we'll be talking about the opportunities that innovation or innovators have in terms of solving socioeconomic challenges and for sustainable economic growth. Now, today I am actually joined by a great wealth of speakers who are captains of industry and experts in the area of innovation. I'm going to introduce my panelists one by one, and I hope that you're excited to hear from them and learn one or two things from each. So I will start by introducing first myself. I am Alice Higiro, and I'm very happy to be your moderator for this session. And we've enjoyed all the other sessions before this, and so I'm very excited about this particular one too. So my speakers here today are Mr. Jeet Vijay, the CEO of Meity Startup Hub at the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology in the Government of India. Mr. Vijay, you're very welcome. Great.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate this opportunity and looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Vijay. Up next, we have Mr. Parvez Alam, CEO and Director of Crescent Innovation and Incubation Council in India. Mr. Parvez, you're very welcome. I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Please do correct me.
It's okay, Alice. It's right. You're right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we have Mr. Lavine Singh, the CEO of Tsiko Africa Technologies in South Africa. Mr. Singh, you're very welcome to the session.
Thank you, Alice. Really looking forward to the chat, and thanks for the opportunity to share.
Sure thing. And then next we have Mr. Samarth Saxena, who works at Astrome Technologies in India. Mr. Saxena, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Alice. So like everyone else, I'm also looking forward to hear from everyone more than what I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. And lastly, we have Mr. Abhijit Chaudhary, the founder and CEO of Niral Networks in India as well.
Yeah,
Mr. Abhijit, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Alice, and hello, everybody. Pretty excited to be part of this discussion and looking forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, speakers. I hope that I did not mispronounce anyone's name. If I did, please do correct me. So right now, I'm just going to give you an opportunity to tell us who you are. In each of you, you tell us who you are, what you do, and where you work. And then after that, we'll jump straight into the session. If that's okay with you, Mr. Vijay, we'll start with you.
Of course, Alice. So my name is Jeet, as everyone has heard. I work at the Ministry of Electronics and IT in the Government of India in Delhi as the CEO for the Startup Hub. Startup Hub is an initiative of the ministry to consolidate and work with startups across the nation, particularly in high-tech and deep-tech areas.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay. Up next, we have Mr. Parvez.
Hi, I'm Parvez, and I'm the CEO of Crescent Innovation Incubation Council. So we are actually a startup business incubator. We are operating from Chennai. We support startups on various fronts, on helping from mentoring to raising money and then reaching out to market. Thank you.
Fantastic. Mr. Singh, over to you.
Thanks, Alice. Yeah, Lavine Singh here. I'm the CEO of Tsiko Africa Technologies, tech business based out of Johannesburg in South Africa. And we focus on a number of digital transformation related opportunities, working with startups, brewing our own startups in-house as well. So yeah, a bit of a mixed mash of technology offerings.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. Mr. Saxena?
Yeah, thank you, Alice. So my name is Samar Saxena. I've been working at Astrome here at Bangalore. So we are a deep tech startup who is in the domain of making a patented millimeter wave 5G device for basically backhaul services.
Great, thank you very much. And Mr. Abhijit, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. So I am Abhijit Chaudhary, co-founder and CEO of Niral Networks. We are headquartered at this point in Bangalore and have an office in US. So what we are trying to build a private 5G infrastructure software stack, which would be used to develop your own last mile like connectivity solution within the enterprise or rural, which is affordable and simple. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, audience, I think you can now see what I meant when I said we have captains of industry here and experts who are really relevant for the conversation of this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. All right, so thank you very much for tuning in. Right now, we're just going to jump straight into the panel questions. Mr. Vijay and Mr. Singh, allow me to start with you and ask you to start us off and just help us to understand what the innovation ecosystem in your particular region looks like and sort of what the landscape looks like in your ecosystem. Mr. Vijay, you give us the India perspective, and then Mr. Singh can give us the South Africa or Africa perspective. Mr. Vijay, over to you.
Thank you so much. See, when we start thinking about the ecosystem in India, it's quite a journey that we've had. So innovation and frugal innovation in particular has been part of the Indian DNA from age immemorial. If you start thinking about it, how the Indians have been operating. But when I want to point out is that starting in 2016, when our Honorable Prime Minister launched a mission called Startup India, from then till now, within 5 years, India has become the second largest startup hub in the world. More than 50,000 startups are operating in India. And if you look at it, the number of unicorns that are created in India is increasing and increasing at a rapid rate year over year. And so these are not just the startups that you look at in the, let's say, SaaS or the high-tech world. These are the startups that are in social impact domains as well. India is a country that's very heterogeneous. It's very large. Demographically, it's very different. So now what Indian government has been working on is making sure how do you create the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in our country. And it is that effort that has led us to realize the vision of our Prime Minister, because if you look at every single ministry, it has been working hand in hand with the private sector to nourish the startups of today, which are the industries of tomorrow. Be it in healthcare, be it in infrastructure, be it in education, be it in manufacturing, you name it, in every domain. India is a rainbow of opportunities when it comes to innovation and creation for the future. And so what we want to emphasize today is on the digital aspect of it. So while sitting at the Ministry of Electronics and IT, what we have created is, if you look at in the historical context of the last few years, UPI, enabling digital transaction, and has become the largest platform for enabling fintech. You look at Aadhaar. Aadhaar card is the universal identity that has been created to provide identity solution for our individual citizens. If you look at COVID app was launched by the government to make sure that during the pandemic that we have been going through, how do you trace and monitor and report adverse effect? So technology has come to the fore, especially in this pandemic time. Historically, we used to say that education is a great equalizer. Now technology is a great equalizer. And to become a $1 trillion technology economy, Indian government has been working very hard to digitize that landscape that presents itself to us. And I hope we get more opportunities to discuss how we can take this digital transformation that's happening in India and connect it globally for the benefit of inclusive development of all our people around the world.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Mr. Singh, over to you.
Thanks, Alice. Yeah, I think the economy, the whole digital economy and ecosystem is certainly taken a steep growth curve on the back of the epidemic around COVID. We've seen a massive spurt in startup hubs in South Africa, Africa as a whole. Many ideas, many concepts being put out to the market. In fact, to the point that it's created a lot of noise in the system. It's created a lot of disruption in the system, which is sometimes positive as well as creating some negativity. I think where we find ourselves playing quite a key role as a orchestrator of startups or as a support structure for startups is that we're trying to find, those propositions or those startups that are starting to, provide some niche value, as well as creating sort of cohesive, collaborative ecosystems for collaborating on solutions for the country. What we've also seen is a great support from the public sector. Similarly, our president's actually put together a digital council or advisory forum that reports directly into him, focusing specifically on trying to kickstart and restart the economy much, from an economic point of view on the back of digital adoption. And as you can imagine, it's not an easy task, especially in a country where a lot of the connectivity is still a challenge, and a lot of the foundational requirements and capabilities are a challenge, which forces a lot of conversations and thought around how we improve the maturity overall of the people, the processes, public and private strategies, and collaboration there to try and expedite and accelerate startup growth and value propositions for those startups. Personally, I've been involved in assisting and growing a few startups, and we've done acquisitions of some of those startups, as well as just given support and grown startups to go on their own, which I believe that's where we're seeing the value these days, is creating a sort of factory to create and accelerate startups. And that's where we're seeing a lot of value moving forward, and also to advise private and public sector on how best to adopt digital and concepts and technologies that come with that to reach optimum value as fast as possible, and to make commercial sense on those, which is often something that is overlooked, is the commercial side of this. So we've been assisting quite a bit in private and public sector from that perspective.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Vijay, I like what you said about technology now being the great equalizer as compared to the past, where education was the main thing. And what you've both said on, I think something that's constantly come up in all the other sessions as well is the collaborative approach between the government and the private sector and all other players in the ecosystem to really fast track digital adoption and use of innovation and technology for development. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, Mr. Parvez, over to you. Can you help us understand, for someone who is in the audience who hasn't interacted with the terminologies that we are using here before, or who doesn't know much about the innovation ecosystem, can you help us understand, is innovation relevant to some sectors only, or is it relevant to all sectors in terms of problem solving?
Yeah, thank you, Alice. Actually, this, as Jeet sir mentioned during his initial remarks, that India is a frugal country, and then we have find out frugal engineering everywhere. So I don't think innovation is subject to any specific domain. Of course, if you see the economic sectors of India, is mostly into services, manufacturing, and agriculture, and so on. We can break down sectors into primary, secondary, tertiary, and so on. But having said that, but if you see these unicorns came, there are 61 unicorns reported, even the India. If you see, most of them are in the fintech, edutech, and e-commerce, and software service platform, and so on. So while we can't neglect that innovation is part of particular sector, but the sector which is more scalable, in fact the unicorns came up because of the investments they have received. So I have spoken to many investors. They say that they rate the top 3 parameters for any innovation to get invested. So the number one they said is the scalability. So they say that they don't look for innovation. The first thing is they say how scalable, how Uber, Ola can be scalable, how Swiggy and Zomato is scalable, how fast, how quick they can acquire clients. In fact, the average unicorns arrived in India is 6 to 8 years. So the first most is the scalability. And second most is the founders' passion. They see that how founders involved are passionate about that. The third most they say is the innovation, the technology and patent, what IP they have. So having said that, we can't say that innovation is restricted to any particular sector, but however, in India, the sectors which given most important is more on the software as a service, as well as e-commerce, edutech, and agri-tech is rising. In fact, I see a lot of connections in Africa as well as India in the agri-tech side. In fact, we are one of our startup who is making a agri-tech startup who is actually making a high protein rice. They have now exported to Ghana. In fact, I'm planning to go Ghana at the end of this month to build a collaboration between the Indian and African startups. So that's, I think, my 2 cents for the question. I hope I answered, Alice.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You did. Thank you very much. But basically, what you said is it's relevant to all the sectors, but the three parameters that you mentioned to look at or pay attention to are the scalability of the solution, the innovation of the technology being applied, and the passion of the entrepreneurs that are introducing these innovations. I like that. Thank you very much. And it's a really nice segue into the next question that I'm going to ask to Mr. Saxena. Mr. Parvez, you mentioned about India having so many unicorns, and Mr. Vijay as well alluded to that. And so now coming to Africa, we know that Africa is a highly youthful population, and a lot of them are tech savvy. So now when we think of that, what kind of skills should young people be focusing on acquiring to now develop the next unicorns of the continent? Mr. Saxena, over to you.
Thank you, Alice. I think the skills which any young person, any innovator should have, I think I really agree with Mr. Parvez, is the passion and the tenacity of the founders. Like that goes without saying. And because building a startup and scaling it up to a unicorn status will be a long and arduous journey. And if I talk to you only about, let's say, some of the deep tech startups, like going beyond the fintech or service-based or SaaS startups. So this skill is even more valid for founders of deep tech startups, because it can start from something like a lab-based or a project-based prototype, and from there scaling it up to something which is commercially viable is takes a lot of patience. Like the development effort can span from 1 year to a couple of years, or maybe even 5 years. But in this whole process, you like passion and your determination is something which will help you go through. So of course, like you do need the feedback from the market. You do need feedback from your mentors, from your investors, to continuously iterate and have the correct market fit of your product. But at the end, this patience and your passion is something which will take you till that journey. So, and why people do innovate in especially in deep tech startup is they do need while they do need a lot of talent to do this, like a lot of expertise in, let's say, software or even hardware. Okay, so nowadays having a software expertise is not enough. You need in your team hardware expertise. Either the co-founders should have the expertise, or if they feel it is amiss in their team, like you need people who have a wealth of experience here. So if I give you the example of my field, which is telecom and wireless sector, so you need people who can, make design electronic system. You need people who can do some kind of digital signal processing. You need people who can build your RF systems, as well as you need people who can handle manufacturing of your products. So it's difficult to find these skills in one person, but you need to hire, or you need to, hone the skills of your talent which is available in your society. And sometimes it's not easy, but if you find if you find people who have experience in these sectors and are equally passionate as you, like it will really result in your product, like I said, taking it from a lab to a commercially viable product. And all this while, what they should aim at, any co-founder, is having an IP-driven solution or a product. Your years of research and development should, in the end, result in some patents. Because although initially you may not have any revenue, you may not tick any metrics of any investor, but at the end, if you do create some patents, it will help you to eventually create some moat around your own product, which will be really hard to beat maybe 5 years down the line. So I think we should also start giving more importance to writing patents, filing patents, understanding about the patent IP rules of a country, whether and not just of your host country, and also of the country you want to launch your product in, because these rules vary a lot from geography to geography. So I think these are some things which we should try to focus on.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Saxena. I really appreciate that you started by highlighting the other soft skills or other skills that we usually, when we talk about, the startup ecosystem, we jump straight into the technical skills. But what you touched on about the patience and endurance and tenacity, I believe is really key, because it's very easy to have the technical skills, jump into the ecosystem. 2 years down the line, you run out of patience and basically it dies there. So I appreciate that you started with that. And something else that I picked from what you said is to have both the soft and hardware expertise, but also to really leverage other skills available in the market and just maybe focus on honing them for your benefit. Thank you very much, Mr. Saxena. So now, Mr. Singh, if I can come to you, what kind of opportunities do you see on the horizon for our innovators on the continent?
Yeah, I think I go back to the points I raised earlier. Some of the foundational capabilities that drive the digital transformation adoption are still a concern across the continent. And these foundational capabilities, specifically around connectivity, access to devices, smart devices, and access to platforms, whether it's cloud-hosted platforms or whether it's on-prem hosted platforms. These three capabilities drive a lot of the digital transformation, across any environment. At this stage, as a continent, from a connectivity point of view, South Africa itself, we're certainly not at the point where we need to be from a connectivity point of view. So that remains an opportunity for growth and certainly a key capability that bridges the digital divide. So that's something that does need improvement. From a platforms point of view, cloud hosting point of view, there's a lot of growth in that space and a lot of opportunities in that space that are already becoming prevalent in the market. So I think that still remains something across the continent that needs attention. And then, of course, the smart device access. It's a key aspect of trying to enable that digital divide gap being closed. So the access of affordable devices remains a concern and still remains a need at this stage. From a skills point of view, I think there's a lot to be done around skilling. Like I go back to the point of skilling, not just from the aspect of technical skills, but certainly skills around, and you mentioned the softer skills that come into it, but certainly skills around how to sell great ideas and how to pitch great ideas and how to pitch to investors. Those are softer skills which often, the technically strong individuals don't necessarily have. And they find themselves with great ideas, but just not being able to get their pitch across properly. And that can be the failure of a really good startup, the ability to get your idea across well. So this still remains, and there's a lot of opportunity for coaching and mentorship and growth in that space. I think we're finding that the landscape is starting to, flourish as far as technical skills goes. There's a lot of youngsters coming out of Boston with a lot of data science skills, coding skills, foundational skills that they can develop, further on. But I think where we're lacking is that specialization skills that require, the software side and the hardware side my colleagues have alluded to on here, that specialization skill gaps remain of concern. And I think that for me really remains a gap that needs to be filled in. And then, I think like we have, the collaboration with partners internationally is a key component as well. I think collaboration with software vendors in India has been, I think we've done quite a bit of network vendors in India as well, has been a big play for us. And we're seeing a lot of opportunities in that space from an international collaborative point of view. But the point would be is often these startups that we've been advising, they don't have access to that type of support structures and to access to those types of players internationally. And therefore, that level of support to them is something that's quite key to assist them and give them access to some of those international players. So yeah, for sure, those are some of the areas where we can certainly collaborate on and find improvements.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh. I think you've given us a really good picture of the needs in the ecosystem, including access to infrastructure, devices, platforms, and skilling. I think the skilling is really coming up quite a lot, and I think this is actually a good area of opportunity in this India-Africa partnership, given how advanced the India partners are. I think this is a great area of exchange. So I'll come to now Mr. Abhijit. What kind of successes can you share with us that you've had along your innovation journey that you can share with the audience to sort of inspire them or share a word of knowledge?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alice. So I have almost 7 years of experience running startups, and this is my third startup. And mostly I have worked in telecom and deep tech, mainly with hardware and software mixed. So yeah, I would be very candid on the feedback because I think probably this will be very useful to the folks who are looking to start companies, especially in the telecom or like deep tech. Is that whenever, when you start and embark into the digital, the startup journey, I think one thing you have to look into is that you have to have some idea about what you want to build, and you have to really focus on that. Like when I started my first company and started working on that, we had so many ideas into our mind, like it was always playing to us. But it is always important that you focus on a single idea and try to work that idea or discuss that idea with the customers, probably try to get some paid customer, or people who wants to trial that solution, even if you don't have a solution, right? Because if you start building the solution, spend around 6 years, 6 months to 1 year to build a solution, then you go to the customer. By that time, you may figure out that the customers don't need that solution. Maybe something you thought earlier makes more sense. So it's always very important that in the initial 2 years, you have to be very careful. You have to be ready to fail fast if the idea is not good, and pivot and start again, right? And especially with telco startups or the deep tech startups, it is more important. You play with hardware, you have to do some capital expenditure. So you should be very, you should actually be talking to a lot of customers. And one way we did that is that we ensured even when we didn't have a product, we did create a digital brand. We had a great website, we had good presence in LinkedIn, we had a great SEO, search engine optimization running, and we got a direct input from the customer, like they want this product. Okay, you have this in your website. Can we take that? And we got customers from Africa, Europe, though we are based in India, calling us because we had a digital presence, right? I think that is absolutely important. While you are building the product, that input from the customer, not only from India, whom you can probably directly reach, but also have a digital presence which will help you to get people from outside India to give you feedback, is very important. And that's absolutely important, I would say. We should have that correctly. And the other part which is important is do not always wait to get the full product ready. Even if you get the customer is interested in the product, whenever you build part of the feature, try to show that to the customer, in the sense that you should demo it to customer, maybe present it somewhere, demo it to customers, do some trials, etc., to get more feedback. I think that is very important for any companies in deep tech. Otherwise, we'll lose like 1 year, 2 years just doing something which does not make sense, and then like after that we really start building ourselves. And lastly, one more important part is that when you are like building the digital presence, you should also develop a lot of business. In the sense, you should develop the ecosystem. You should connect to the right partners, like the system integrators, maybe to the operators, maybe the OEM vendors, to the ODM vendors, I mean the device vendor. You should create that ecosystem. It should not be you build the product, then you build the ecosystem. You start engaging with the bigger companies, the OEMs, the system integrators from the beginning. And that's why I think startup, especially in telecom, and is pretty challenging. And if you are not funded, it's all the more complex. So, but you need to do all those things from ground up, from the beginning. And absolutely, I would request all of them to have that doing from the beginning. And one most important thing which I felt like initially is that in my first startup, in my first 3 years, I did not have any income. So I did not have any income for the first 3 months, 3 years. So you should always have a backup source of income when you are running the startup. Either you have good amount of money in your bank, or you do some consulting, whatever you do, but you ensure that you have enough money to run your family. Otherwise, you will not be able to concentrate on anything if things are going awry. So that's very important, and I would really suggest people to look into that seriously. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abhijit. You've really just inspired me. Listening to you myself, I want to go out there and be an innovator. So thank you so much. If I can summarize what you said, you touched on something that relates back to what Mr. Singh had said about specialization. Find that one area, focus on that one area, become the expert and the best in that particular area. And also you mentioned about agility and having iterative approaches, to have consistent or constant feedback loops with customers so that your solutions remain relevant, be willing to fail forward, and also pivot when things don't work out. And I think it was Mr. Saxena who also alluded to this. You said to invest in research and development, keep yourself informed and constantly learning, and also have a backup or a source of income. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhijit. I think I will become an innovator myself after this this summit. Thank you. All right, so over to you now, Mr. Parvez again. We know that policies can both be a blocker or an enabler of innovation. What kind of considerations should governments be having in order to unlock or not choke innovation?
Yeah, I think COVID-19 is itself is a great example, and then India, as all Indians agree, that we rise up to the occasion, and then we proved that digitization is the way. In fact, India is the second fastest digitized economy, and then our Prime Minister is personally pushing it to make it happen. So many small businesses actually survived, and then they have given they have proved themselves that they are better competitive advantage than the big corporates and so on. But having said that, the government should support them. For example, now the Startup India, thanks to the initiative from Startup India as well as the Meity and other, they are extraordinarily doing good job in supporting startups. For example, now many ministries have already considered to involve startups in the public procurement, preferential treatment in the public procurement. That is, up to a certain level, the first right of refusal will be given to the startups. Then it will be handed over to the corporate. So is public procurement, involving startups in the public procurement is a great move. Already some ministries have started doing it in India, and then they should continue to do it. And second is the subsidies and capital subsidies and so on, and capital grants. So many state governments I belong to the state of Tamil Nadu, so they started giving a lot of supports to the startups in terms of the grants. And third is the regulations. Now, recently, the Ministry of Civil Aviation has, has actually given a lot of waivers for the startups who are working in the drone industry. So they say that they can't meet some of the regulatory conditions. So they have waived even some policies in the regulatory side. I just saw that published recently. So they have gone even up to that level. So I think this I would say COVID is a ban or boon. So I would say is a now boon coming up for the India, especially for all the ministries are supporting up. But still a lot more push need to be given from the government side. But I was just going through what African side, our counterpart is doing. But I saw there is Africa Agenda 2063, where I see a lot of blueprint and master plan coming up to transfer, Africa into the global powerhouse. And I saw there are 500 plus African companies are getting into technology-enabled, innovations, and then over 640 tech hubs across India, across continent of Africa supporting, and then African startups valuation now crossing $1 billion and so on. I think this is a very right time for we are having and discussing about India, Africa in the ICT side. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Parvez. What I picked from you is to really be intentional in supporting startups, and some of the things that your government has done is to involve, startups in public procurement, and to an extent giving them preferential treatment, providing subsidies in terms of grants and to their capital, and also accommodating them in relation to regulations, to even emerging technologies and things that we haven't seen before. Maybe. Thank you so much, and for the highlight on the Africa interventions as well. All right, over to you, Mr. Vijay. Could you share with us? I think you've already touched a little bit on this, but we want to hear more on what are India's areas of strength when it comes to innovation. You had mentioned a bit on fintech, but is there something else? And how can we learn from you?
See, I'll tell you one thing. Hearing Abhijit talk and Parvez mentioning as well, so it's a passion of young entrepreneurs like Abhijit, right? Which actually motivates the government to put in resources, because it's on the back of these young dreamers that the new India is being built. That's what our Honorable Prime Minister said, that it's India is going to be built by this demographic dividend that we have, and these are the people that take it to the frontiers of the heights. Now, when we look at it in terms of the technology area, so the ministry has been working very diligently on the emerging technology space as well, right? So in India, there's just like in Africa, we share a lot of similarities, right? We have demographic, drive, and dreams, which are all very similar, right? Be it the demographic or the drive that the young population has, or the dreams that we all aspire to come out of that emerging country paradigm and to realize our dreams. But where do we really need to sync up, and what can we learn from? Of course, when we talk more, concrete-wise, we can say there is the opportunity for market, for investments, for co-creation, for technology transfer. But I think those are very prescriptive measures. Where we look at it is that, of course, there's 5G happening, there's robotics happening, there's drone, then now anti-drone technologies happening, there's quantum computing, supercomputing, everything is happening. Social impact startups are coming up. But what is the fundamental thing that leads to the creation of all these things, right? It's the collaboration. Collaboration leads to community creation. It leads to innovation. And this is where I want to harp back on the point of technology. Who are our friends, right? And who are our family? It's the people we communicate with, right? We become close to them because we talk to them. Now, technology is allowing us to redefine the paradigm of who our friends are, who our families are, because we can talk to anybody sitting anywhere today on this VC, right? On this virtual conferencing platform. Now, so what do we need to do to build more bridges and enable more things to happen is events like this, where we can actually showcase the opportunities and the individuals that are associated, because let people collaborate, let people communicate, let them define their own economic values that they want to get out of it, because value comes in a lot of different ways. The role of government is to make sure that we can enable cooperation, collaboration, and community creation. Let the innovation come out of the economic paradigm. It's a capitalism that'll define where the value is being created. So from the government perspective, of course, we got hundreds of incubators, we got ton of center of excellences, a lot of technology, a lot of funding intervention. But ultimately, all of that is nothing unless we have entrepreneurs like Abhijit who are working on Parvez and their incubator, and Lavine who's enabling this cross-border communication. All these things have to come together, and then a lot of opportunities can come out of these interactions. And I think that's where we need to leverage more of these technology platforms, create new communities, new friends, and new collaboration opportunities.
Fantastic. That was really, really brilliant, Mr. Vijay. Thank you so much. So basically create more opportunities for interaction and co-creation between the different communities. And from there, I think we even discover new problems that we did not know or did not anticipate, and also crowdsource solutions. Thank you very much. I like something that you said at the beginning, that the new India is built on the passion of young people and their dreams. So I really, really like that, and how intentional your government is to supporting them. Thank you so much. I'll move now to Mr. Saxena, and I'll ask you, given the current parameters, the current landscape of, with COVID-19, the global crisis, what do innovators need to be able to function or thrive in such an economy, or in such a time as this?
So I think what innovators need, especially in COVID, is we need a robust ecosystem of startups, which has focused mentorship and attention given to them. I think, but from an Indian perspective, I think over the last 5 years, 10 years, it has tremendously improved from where we were in 2010 to the kind of startups being funded then, to cut short to 2021, like the deep tech startups, the startups which don't have a low-hanging fruit, they are also attaining the status of unicorn. So from that perspective, over the last 10 to 20 years, we have greatly improved as an ecosystem, or as a society which really encourages startups to scale up. But we also have had those investors who can take that risk. Okay, so for example, for any deep tech startup, you need investors also who are patient and who understand the pain points which which the founders themselves understand. So, and they don't just force you to tick off some metrics, or because at the initial few years, you may not even earn any revenue. So you need people, you need mentors who understand this and help you help you in that journey. And one thing which everyone is alluding to, I will also come back and highlight the importance of that, is how cross collaboration is important. So cross collaboration between startups, cross collaboration between startup and a big company, or between startup and, let's say, any government R&D facility is also really important. So my personal experience has always been that the government R&D labs, for example, if you approach them, if you tell them what you're doing, so they are also helpful. And it has helped me in my career, my startup, and I feel more and more people across India should also look at that. They might not have been used that much, but that is also a very good platform with set infrastructure already there. And of course, wherever there are any points of interaction between your company and the government, there always scope of improvement there, like to make those interactions smoother and less friction, with more frictionless, as something like which we say as ease of doing business. And online such sessions decide what we are doing. So whereas companies across sectors, companies across geographies can also learn from each other's failures, each other's success stories. You also need motivation, right? Not passion and patience and hard work will take you there, but you also need to get motivated by success stories of others. So it will help you stay motivated, stay on course, as well as save a lot of time, maybe months or years, in not going or making the same mistake as someone else has done. So this type of cross collaboration online session is something which is very important. And how you collaborate depends on case to case basis. Like I alluded to a particular thing, I think in any other geography you need to find ways or some resources or infrastructure which you don't have but they are easily available. So that is something we all need to work on. And at the end, I think with work from home becoming more popular in companies, I think it also like one precaution which we all need to take is like with sometimes the professional and personal life blurring, like the boundary between them blurring. Like you should also understand it's a marathon and not a sprint. So I would suggest to everyone, do take a while to pause, re-energize, and then come back, because you're not running a sprint. Uh, you're running a marathon. So I think other than that, whether it's COVID tomorrow, there may be some other problems or innovators, whether in India or Africa. I think we all will find a way out, at least, and the ones which stay will, really have a lot of something really good going on. That's why they have survived. So at the end, innovators or startups will survive.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Saxena. Something that I really like that's come up in this particular conversation or panel is the human aspect to innovators. We appreciate the technology part, we appreciate the business part, and be driven, be passionate, and all of that. But there's come up something more than once about taking care of yourself. Saxena, you just alluded to that, and someone earlier mentioned it as well. It's not a marathon; it's a sprint. I mean, it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. So take time for self-care to avoid burnout. Because if you're burnt out as a innovator, then you really reduce your chances to even becoming a unicorn. And then something else that you said that can help them to thrive in such a time as this is ease of doing business, facilitation in that sense, and also build or expanding on the robust ecosystem, cross collaboration. This has come up quite a few times as well. And creating knowledge sharing platforms, even across continents, across your region and Africa. I believe that that's very valuable input. Thank you very much, sir. Now I'll come to Mr. Abhijit. Still talking about the pandemic, how have Indian innovators stepped up to the game and really participated in solving problems or even economic recovery of the country?
Yes, thanks, Alice. So I'd share the views based on what I've observed. And again, I may not have seen all the parts, especially I'm more focused on the IT and like the telecom infra, but which are more on the online stuff, but there are a lot of offline infrastructure too. But I'll focus on what I've seen of how India has recovered. I mean, like in like early 2020, I mean, like 1.5 years back, it was really pushed. Like like there are a lot of uncertainties about sales, about customers, about what is happening. But if I see now, like 1 year down the lane, what has happened is that I've seen that Indian startups or like even the bigger companies have been pretty resilient, and they have come up and really grown. I mean, just this year, 2021, we have 28 unicorns and plus. It's growing. There is a company called Apna, startup, started in 2019, almost around late of 2019, and they are the youngest unicorn. But within 1.5 years to 2 years, they became an unicorn. What they do is that they are creating an online presence to recruit blue collar employees or workers. Pandemic, lot of blue collar employees, workers lost their job, right? And there, that created an opportunity. And I mean, Apna really seized that opportunity, created a great platform, and within 1.5 years to 2 years, they have, I mean, helped a lot of blue collar employees to get job. And now you see that it's already a unicorn. Probably the youngest or the unique who would have been an unicorn in least amount of time, right? So so not only that, if you see anywhere, like when you wake up in the morning, what do? You need your groceries to make your breakfast. Everything is online now in India, especially in urban. That's a thing that I don't have a great insight into the rural sector, but in the urban, I mean, thanks to like companies like Airtel, Jio, and all, and the internet service providers like Spectra, I mean, everything is connected. Starting morning, you buy your groceries in Big Basket or companies like that. You get if you want to send some item transport, like you have an application that you have to send to somebody else in your colleague in Bangalore or somewhere else. Just use another online app to transport, which is called Dunzo. Then for food, well, you don't want to cook a food, then okay, order it using Swiggy or Zomato. Well, you have to pay to Swiggy and Zomato. Okay, use GPay or Paytm. Okay, I need medicine for my parents. Well, I have Big Basket, sorry, MedPlus to order to. I mean, everything is online, and all my conferences on Zoom or all those things, right? Well, I mean, if you see, most of the companies that I talked about are kind of Indian. They have kind of set, they have helped us to actually travel through or go through the pandemic in a pretty good way. I mean, I really didn't feel that I'm always at home. I mean, I was able to stay connected all over the time. And most of the companies that I named just now are all unicorns or gone IPO, like Zomato went IPO. Big Basket, there was an M&A. Tata actually acquired a big stake in Big Basket. So there has been a lot of movements within the startups as well as all the big companies, like a lot of M&A, like Tata acquiring multiple companies like Big Basket, Reliance Jio also acquiring similar, Starlight, all of them acquiring. So I think what it has brought is that a lot of companies are coming together to build a new vertical, and lot of small startups which started and really seized the opportunity have gone IPO, or at least they have become like an unicorn. So it has been really interesting, the space, and I'm looking forward to many more. I think COVID has been in some ways it has helped to figure out new opportunities, new ways to digitize work from not only home, from anywhere. Now you don't really need a physical presence. Virtually be present anywhere and start do your work and be productive. And lastly, I think a lot of that we need to thank all the like the digitizing or the network connectivity company. Maybe I have been working with telecom a lot, so I'm reiterating that. But telecom or the ISPs has played a great role, and we need to. I think they have been a transformation. They have been
Yeah.
brought a lot of transformation here.
Right,
Thank you.
right. Thank you very much, Mr. Abhijit. That was really exciting to listen to, and to me, it actually sounds like, opportunity sometimes lies, or most of the time even lies, in the small mundane things that we do on a day to day. And it sounds like that's exactly where the innovators saw opportunity in terms of digitizing the day to day processes or service delivery, and they've really facilitated that and made it a smooth journey for you. Well, it can't be completely smooth, but it's been better than would have been anticipated. Thank you very much, Mr. Abhijit. Now, lastly, we'll come to Mr. Vijay, if you can help us to close the session, and Mr. Singh as well. Mr. Singh, maybe let me start with you. How can innovators across our regions leverage this opportunity of India-Africa partnership in order to grow their businesses or even their capabilities? Mr. Singh, if you can go first, and then Mr. Vijay will close for us. Just to let you know that we have about 6 minutes left to go. So if you can give us precise and short answers, it would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So I think the opportunity lies in identifying those areas of strengths and weaknesses between the different countries. I think it's conversations that need to happen around strengths and weaknesses, and creating that sort of collaborative nature of connecting in a way that's an effective way of connecting, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things we need to put in place. But I certainly think the strengths from a India perspective around the expertise in the software side, becomes a big leveraging point for Africa. And it's trying to create those collaborative sessions and collaborative platforms for that to happen. It's probably the ideal way to go forward. And I think it's really about trying to also leverage relationships and networks that people have, personal networks and relationships that people have across the borders, is a key play as well. So yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much. So identify areas of strengths and weaknesses and figure out what collaborative ways would be effective for this particular relationship. Thank you so much. Mr. Vijay, over to you.
Thank you so much. So when I think about this, it's historically put in the context. So what drives our human evolution is communication, transportation, and transaction. These are the three technologies that actually drive the growth of economies and societies as we evolve. Now, these problems are common for every continent, every country, be it transaction, transportation, and communication. Africa definitely has a need for improvement in all those three. India has been working on, especially in the transaction part and communication, like what WhatsApp and others have done. So using a focus on these things, then pivoting it from to see what is the local need, right? Solving a local problem is the must before you start looking bigger, right? So identify what is the local issue that you want to target. India can provide a template approach because we go through a similar kind of journey that we have been going through. And third thing is looking at, again, I'm going to quote our Prime Minister, is we are one world, one people, right? So we got to have a different perspective on who are we competing with, who are we collaborating with. So identify the problem, focus deeply on it, and find the collaborations. And nobody's bigger, nobody's smaller. Somebody can give money, somebody can give market, somebody can give intellect, right? So, and somebody can give the passion. So partnerships can come in a lot of ways. We just need to make sure that we can collaborate, we can find opportunities, and we can create something together because we live in one world and the future of the humanity depends on collaboration.
Thank you very much. That was short and sweet. Thank you to you, Mr. Vijay and Mr. Singh. I like what you ended with. To me, that sounded like India is the big brother that's gone through a few things before and has figured out ways to navigate them. And so is saying to younger brother Africa, hey, here's the different ways that you could possibly approach this. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been a very interesting and very interactive session. I've learned so much, and I hope that our audience has enjoyed the session as well. And so maybe to just close off, if you can very briefly give us a parting word, a motivational word that our audience can leave this session with and never forget you by. Thank you very much. So Mr. Vijay, if you can give us your first one. Thank you.
I thought I already did.
Oh, okay, that was it. That's okay. That's okay if you already did. All right, Mr. Parvez, I see you're moving, so maybe just quickly.
Yeah, I think we are looking for a lot of India, Africa startups collaboration, and we have already started on it, and then we are looking forward.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Singh?
Yeah, I think we've already leveraged the strengths of India, and I think we'd like to open up that network wider, and as much as we can support bi-directionally. And yeah, that's where we'd like to play a significant role in keeping that going.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Abhijit.
Yes, we should be collaborating. I see there is a lot of like companies from Africa reaching to India. So I think the idea is that we should collaborate with each other and help each other to help the companies in India as well as in Africa. And lastly, we should start from the universities. We should be collaborating in the universities, the colleges. We should help startups being fostered from the colleges in India and Africa. That is how we can really build the next generation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Saxena, very briefly, we have about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just keep it short. So just in tune to what everyone is saying, I think collaboration and developing an ecosystem will automatically, bring up lots of unicorns. It has got so in India, and it may also do in Africa.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you to our virtual audience. We have enjoyed speaking to you and sharing some of our knowledge from the panelists. Panelists, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. Until next time. Bye-bye.